Hello, everybody. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Let's check this one out. Okay, awesome. Sweet, guys. Okay, let me start by sharing my screen straight away before I forget. So let's share that. Okay, I see that Scott found us. Awesome. Sweet. Yesterday I posted a screenshot, this one here, that was doing some render just now, actually. So let me just crank the samples here so we can actually see it again with a little bit more resolution. So the thing that I did differently yesterday, I didn't do in the previous class, was that everything I was trying to do when it comes like to the likeness, I was using the camera in ZBrush, and trying to trust the camera was a little tricky. Even with the new 3D camera, although it's been very useful to it's like export and import the cameras from ZBrush to different scenes of ZBrush, like different files, and also import the camera to Maya, right? Like if you need to do that, you can do that with the FBX export and import. So you can do that. I showed you yesterday, so it's in the video if you want to check it out. Even though if you're doing that, it's still the camera I cannot trust that much. It's like it doesn't quite look like I was expecting. I mean, like I showed you this before. For example, like if I go to draw here and I click those buttons, sometimes they work. Sometimes, depending on the model, it doesn't work. So I'm getting everything working here, like switching lenses. But when I get to 24, and then between 24, oh, this one, it seems like it's so random. Now it decided to work. All of them are working. I think in a couple of days, like the 24-18 would make no difference. And for my Stan Winston model, basically like anything below 35, it wasn't affecting anything, So it just like basically like 50 and 85 were working. And even at that, I could not, see like if it was actually an exact duplicate of the Maya camera, angle. So yeah, I'm not trusting that much. So what I did yesterday, I actually did this little render. We went through this yesterday. And of course, I changed a couple of parameters here on my shader, but it's basically the same shader that we went through yesterday. The little clay in there that we just started with a little preset, right? And we tweaked things. So the only thing I changed here is basically specular levels, just it's not so shiny. And the coat as well. So I got some different parameters in there, but just like playing with it, because this is not the shader we're going to be using in our model anyway. This was just like a quick demo yesterday. So don't worry too much about it. And then, so I did this rendering here, and I decided to actually try to work a little bit more in Maya to get the likeness a little bit closer, because Maya can trust it as an actual 3D camera, right? So let me just switch here to my perspective. This is the camera I was using yesterday. And then what I had the model like this. I had my interface like this. And I was actually trying to match using this camera here. So I don't know if you're familiar with it. Some of you guys are not power users of Maya, but Maya now, like for the past like 3-4 versions, I think, they actually implemented a lot of the Mudbox stuff. And so the brushes are much cooler now. You can actually sculpt stuff much better in Maya now. So if you go to Mesh Tools, you have now this sculpting tools here, right? And it has this tab. I wasn't a Mudbox user before, so I wasn't very familiar with anything. But I tried to use in the past, and I got so many crashes and everything. I stuck with ZBrush. This was like a long time ago, and I became like a ZBrush user. But I'm actually really enjoying this stuff. It's like at least like to double check proportions and make sure you're trying to match a camera, right? Like I said yesterday, actually the day before. I'm working with probably like a 85 millimeters. Let me just double check here. So this case here, let's see, select camera. Yeah, I'm having using an 85 here because, like I said, it's like a head and shoulders. So that's more likely they're going to use something like that, or maybe 100 even, So you can actually see the 2 ears, right? It's not like too warped, right? So in this case here, I'm actually setting up this this lens, but I don't have any guarantees that this is a precise kind of thing. It's just an estimate. It's enough for me to capture some of the likeness, and then we're gonna compare over time, right? Like any different picture I found of the guy on the internet, they're going to be, you know, comparing to this and seeing how they play out. And at the end, we're going to have an average, of course, because like I said, this is like I'm painting an impression of the person, but it's not like a precision kind of thing, right? I'm not using anything as a blueprint or anything like that. So it's just like trying to come up with an impression of that person, but without the precision, right? It's just like you try the best you can, and with intention of training your eye, of course. So those brushes here, they work pretty much like the same as ZBrush in a way, right? Like you have your grab brush in there, you have some smooth brush. So in this case here, I use mostly this. So if you click, for example, the grab tool, right, which is basically the move tool. So the first thing you're gonna notice here, this is like every time I show some stuff, I do mini little tutorials, even like just to get you guys started if you never did this kind of stuff, because I never know how many people actually use that stuff, right? So I'm gonna switch to my other camera here, and then this is the model I have. It has about like 400,000 polys right now, and it's easy for Maya to handle this many polygons, and it's fairly dense, right? Like for what I need in here, it's fairly dense. I don't even need this many polygons. I could have like one subdivision level less and still do it. But one thing you're gonna notice here, by default, I don't have my symmetry on. And every time you want to, you know, tweak the symmetry parameters and stuff like that, you basically double click the icon in here. So if I double click, it's going to expand the tool settings in here. The tab is going to pop, and then if I click to symmetry in here, you're going to see it's off, right? So if I put topology, now it's going to switch to this mode here. Looks blue, right? So you're gonna just pick one edge. It can be any edge right in the middle. So you click one right here, like that one. And now it's gonna calculate for you the symmetry. It's gonna get out of that mode, so I'm gonna have to click it again. So grab tool, so you click that one. And now you have symmetry, right? To control the size of the brush, you press B, like ball, and then you just like drag, right? Like with the left button, mouse button. So with that, I was able to actually, you know, like look at the picture kind of side by side like that, and based on the render, of course, because the only way to judge anything is by using the render. So if I just do like a little render right here in this area, let's see, shouldn't take too long. I noticed at first that a lot of stuff, like for example, the nose was much bigger than it is here. This area here. Close to his eyebrows, so it's very, very open as well. So I closed it up. So I had the render basically side by side with that. You know, it's like something like that, and maybe a little bigger. And I was just like trying to get some of the stuff. Of course, like I didn't nail it, right? Like there's a lot of work to do, but at least get some more of the proportions in place, like at least like in this area, and then still have to tweak the mouth. Looks a little bit too wide and things like that. But it's been like much more trustworthy to use this system here. I think I'm getting like faster results than trying to go to ZBrush and then exporting the mesh back and then trying to get things, you know, to work. It's much more work because you have to keep like importing and exporting, you know. You can try to use GoZ. I normally don't use it. I had some problems in the past. So I just like export and import. So it takes a long time, you know. So at the end of the day, that's what I did yesterday after the class. So in the spirit of sharing everything I do, you know, when you guys are not watching, right? But you're not the flies on the wall, then I just like I want to share everything that I did. So basically, like I tweaked the shader, and then the other thing is that I basically like use those tools to actually move stuff around. So of course, like if I'm gonna do in real time here, I'm gonna have to pause my render, otherwise it's gonna be super slow. But the grab tool works the same as the move tool, right? And you even have a mode here. If you look at the tools, the tool settings, that you have the constraint to surface, so you can actually slide easily. You know, it's like you slide the edges and keep the same silhouette. So very useful. You know, we have like the relax tool, which does something similar, right? It keeps the silhouette and everything. It just like relaxes it, so it just spreads out the you know, the edges. And then obviously like the sculpt tool, right? Like by default, it has a very strong intensity. So I brought it down like to 0.05, just like to get like a very, very, you know, like a subtle sculpting. So yeah, I just used this one yesterday, and then in ZBrush, the difference became this. So I had this model here, and then I brought the new one. After I finished, I exported from Maya. And when I brought here, basically like the difference is this, right? Actually, this was the one before, the ones we did during the class and a little bit after the class. And then that was after the, the reviews, like for proportions in Maya. So I got like to this slightly different one. Okay. So that's the model I'm actually using at this point, which is basically the same base mesh you guys have, right? And I have a couple of ways to approach this now. I was talking to you yesterday and talking about, the plan was to actually around Tuesday to reproject this into another model I have, right? With a topology I like better than this one. This one is actually I created as a temporary thing, just for if someone didn't have anything, right? Like you could start with it. This one has UV, so potentially you could go all the way and subdivide HD and keep going with the same model all the way through. But you have to remember it's not an ideal model, right? It was all Z-remesher. Like I said before, everything was created by ZBrush, the topology, right? Based on groups. So there are certain areas that are not very ideal in here. For example, the density around here, it's much higher than the density right here that we actually need. It's like in the cheeks in here would be much nicer if you had something like that. Same for the ears, it's not like an optimal model, right? The ears are very dense, but we're going to be sculpting mostly the mask, which is going to be something like this, right? That's the mask we're going to be sculpting. And as you can tell, we don't have a ton of polygons in this mask, right? So it's really up to you guys if you want to do, for example, like retopologize a little bit on your own side, it's like to get something more optimal that can actually get more resolution in there, maybe reduce the resolution in certain areas like this in the ears, anything you want to do. My plan was like, maybe like in this class, I would go like all the way through with the same model as you guys. But I don't want to force anyone to use this because, like I said, it's not an ideal model. And also because I have a plan, which is when I started those series of portraits, I did the Dick Smith and Rick Baker, and then there's the Michelangelo, right? Giger. So all of those models share the same topology. And my intention was to actually have something that's shared that I can actually use as a kickstart for any other model I have in the future, right? So instead of like having to deal with all the technical stuff, that's the most boring part. The fun part is to actually sculpt, right? But the boring part is to actually put everything in place and make sure the topology is working, blah, blah, blah. So my intention from the get-go with those models were actually, okay, I'm going to sculpt everything. I'm going to put like all the pores in high definition in ZBrush. And then if in the future I need to do a new portrait, that was like after the first one I did, I was like, in my mind, I was like, okay, if I can reuse a lot of that information, that means that instead of like taking me many days to go through the whole pipeline and resculpt everything by hand, because that's the intention here in the class, right? Sculpt by hand. I could, for example, like in just like 2 or 3 days, have something that I can actually render with all the shader and all the textures plugged in, and I could have like very fast results. That's why some of the times you saw me posting on Instagram, I would get like a fairly okay result, it's like with shader and a nice lighting and a nice set of maps and everything, like in 2 or 3 days, because I was actually just reusing stuff, right? So it's totally up to you guys, but it's all about trying to save yourself some time as well, right? It's a combination of both. We're going to be doing a lot of manual labor, but also you want to have to do it like in a smart way, right? So in this case here, we are keeping the symmetry all the way until we have the pores placed in the entire mask. And then after they are all in place, then we break the symmetry, and then we're gonna go to town with the wrinkles and customizing things. But in terms of pores, you can go like very vanilla with them. Next week is gonna be just like pore work and gonna be showing all the process. But I mean, like it's not like you're gonna have like to do like asymmetry in pores, right? You can do completely symmetrical, just the vanilla pores, and then you're gonna pick some of them later on asymmetrically. You're gonna make one side, you know, it's like some pores with some variation. Some are deeper. You're gonna add some pimples and things like that asymmetrically. But the vanilla stuff, like the coverage of it, the you know, the default skin or whatever you want to call it, is gonna be, you know, completely symmetrical, and nobody gonna ever notice that, because when you get right here in the middle in this band, we're gonna break the symmetry anyway. We're gonna do everything asymmetrically in the center line. But then the wrinkles actually going to be the ones defining, you know, the main character of the subject. And then, of course, like we're going to be trying to match the symmetry, like ears and eyes, eyelids, things like that. Then you're going to really go to town with the asymmetry, right? But you know, it's like my approach is always to try to average whatever I'm seeing. So if I'm seeing something in a character, if the chin is a little bit more to the side or something, I try to imagine like if it was centered, right? And it's kind of like eyeballing it and trying to get a decent average for those things. So back to the topology. The topology, like I said, is not ideal for the pore sculpting in those areas that we need the most. So I'm going to be switching to another, my base mesh, my go-to base mesh. You guys can do the same on your side. A lot of you guys are professionals and you have your own base meshes. So we can do that. You can switch to your own base mesh. Or you can keep going with this guy, but just be aware that when you subdivide it in HD, if we get that the magic number that we talked about yesterday, which is about 100 million polygons for this entire piece, just remember that you're not going to get the same crispness in this area here, which is a very important one, right? Like that's where the highlight's going to hit the most, right? Like when you're looking at some of my renders, you see the highlights hitting the cheeks a lot, and then you're probably not going to get like super crisp detail in there. Of course, like there's this thing that's the micro displacement or micro bump we're going to be using to break up everything to a smaller detail. And that can help to diffuse that and offset a little bit of the problem we're going to have with the lack of resolution. But I would still encourage you guys to either rework this topology and start with it if you want to, or switch to a better topology maybe. But we're going to need something to work with. So I'm going to be doing a reprojection of this to my model, to the one of those these meshes I used for all the other portraits, and I told you guys I would do this next week, and it would be very boring. So I brought the boredom to today's session, so we get this stuff out of the way, and then from here on out it should be like much better, you know. But I have to do this, and I also gonna do this as a little tutorial. If you happen to be if you happen to have this model already completely filled, you know, it's like with all the detail and everything, and you want to go through that process of, okay, how can I reuse all the beautiful HD geometry I already did? How am I going to transfer it to the next model if I want to have a quick start with it, right? So it's going to serve for that purpose as well. So the best way for me to do this, to reproject things, is when I have something like this, which is not super high res, you know, there's like only 400,000 polys, right? So from your base mesh, which was like 25,000, I subdivided twice, right? And then from here, I can actually project this detail to my HD model. So the way it works is like this. So let's pretend this one is already a complete model. You already had all the pores and everything, and this model already has HD levels in it. Everything is complete, right? And then you're starting a new model. So the way I normally start a new model to prevent contamination, like I mentioned before, I start either from a sphere or from a cube, and then I don't have any contamination, so I can actually go to town with the forms. But because of the class, we have like a little bit more like shorter time to get this stuff down. So we are starting with the base mesh to just speed some stuff up, right? But so let's pretend you started a new model, and now you're not too concerned about topology. You just start from a sphere, and you did a lot of work and everything, and you have a model you like now. The likeness is not perfect, and but you think it's close enough that you're not going to be doing like major changes from this point on. For example, I don't feel like the forehead is going to grow much more than this. You know, it's probably going to maybe like change some shapes in here and everything, but I'm not going to grow too much or shrink too much, right? So at this point here, we could potentially go HD and then start detailing stuff. and then at the same time going back to our primary forms and then tweaking them at the same time, right? Like I said before, this is not a traditional art, right? Like we are dealing with digital art, so we can actually work on both at the same time. You can go back to the lowest levels, work your primary forms, so go back to HD geometry, which is very, very far from the base mesh in terms of the topology, not topology, density. It's not like one is going to affect the other one drastically, you know. So if you change your primary forms here, it's not going to destroy the pore work you did, right? It's going to ride in there. As long as you do carefully, of course, you're not going to be pulling stuff, you know, it's like sideways like this much, right? Because you know that the pore is going to stretch a lot if you do that. So I would avoid that. So if you need to change this form, if the cheekbone was too high in here, instead of like just cheaply just bringing stuff down, right? I would just like resculpt it down here and then, you know, bring that one down, something like that. Just, of course, just exaggerating here just to show you. But so the way it's going to work, I'm going to project this guy into the base mesh I use first. So that base mesh is actually a base mesh that can replace the base mesh for the HD geometry at any time. So I know it's a little confusing, so I'm going to do a demo here. So let's just make sure I save this one first. So save as, and let's get this one here. And I'm going to do like from the start so you can actually follow. So we're going to open here my previous model, which was from last month, Stan Winston, right? So let's open the ZBrush file and see how it looks like. So this one, every single model, all those models, they always have the same amount of polygons. So it's about 70.96 million high def polys, right? So a little bit shorter than 71 million. And in most of the topologies, it's around this area, you know. You have some topology inside of the pockets of the mouth and eyes, of course, but I'm getting like very crisp detail in the cheeks area, and I'm gonna keep doing that. So that's why I'm gonna switch to another model. But like I said, optional for you guys if you want to do that, or if you want to stick with the same model, just beware that you're gonna get a little less detail in the cheeks area because it's a ZBrush auto kind of topology thing. So let's open this one and see how it looks like. It's loading. Okay, and I'm gonna show you what's the logic behind what I'm gonna do now. I think it's a very useful workflow, you know, if you're gonna try to be smart and reuse your maps. So this is the model. Looks very funny without the hair or anything. So that's the little guy in there. Very happy. So so this model here, if I switch to HD, right? Let's do a previewing here. So you get like all this detail in there that we're gonna be working next week. So all this stuff here is in HD. So let's say, okay, I have this model here that's all done. And what if I want to reuse some of this detail, you know? Not everything, but anything I can get that it's not completely, you know, alien to the next character, I can actually try to use, you know, it's like areas like the forehead and the back of the head, instead of like having to cover all this stuff here with the pores or maybe like some of the neck, you know, I can actually reuse that. So the logic is this. You basically go to the lowest resolution from this model here, which the model has all the HD, and I'm gonna export this one as an OBJ, right? So I'm gonna switch to our ray. I'm gonna export to OBJ, and that's gonna be ray. Let's do Stan to ray head, something like that. Stan to ray. So basically, I'm exporting the base mesh of this model, right? And then that means that every time I bring this model back here, I can just import on top of it, and it's gonna adapt, right? And it's gonna preserve all the details I have at the top. So that's the whole point of it. At this point here, what I'm gonna do, I actually gonna just like bring this model back to my, let's open the other file. And so just getting back in here just so it's not too confusing. So I have this model here with all the subdivision levels, and I'm exporting just the base mesh. And then I'm gonna switch back to the other model, and I'm gonna be transferring all the information, the forms from the new model, into this topology, right? Not necessarily inside of this file here with HD, but just using the base mesh. And then once I have that transferred to this base mesh, I can just import this base mesh in this very scene here, and then all of my details should be there at the top. So this is much easier than simply trying to reproject the HD detail straight to the next model, because ZBrush actually accepts you to project like HD to non-HD, non-HD to HD, and HD to HD as well. But it's not an easy process because, for example, like this is like 72 million polygons, right, worth of detail. And if you try to go HD with this model here, you're gonna get probably like chunks of between 25 and 35 million polygons at a time. So that means I have to do the projection in three steps to get all the detail in there, right? So I could potentially do that, transfer everything to the new model, HD to HD, but I would have to select like little chunks. Oh, and on top of that, it's not like you can select a chunk of 35 million polygons and project and think it's gonna go well. ZBrush sometimes has problems with the memory when you do large chunks like that. So it's nicer if you can actually transfer, like, let's say 10 to 15 million polygons at a time. So that means I would have to do like lots of little selections, you know. I would have to just like project just the forehead. Oops. Project just the forehead like that, and then switch to something else, you know, and then project just something like that. You know, probably like have to remove the ears too or something like that. So that would be a pain in the butt, you know. So that's why we're doing just like projecting to the base mesh and then bringing the base mesh to this scene that we already have in here. But don't worry about like the details, because like I did in the previous class, I'm gonna just show you the process, because you can do this in the future with your next models. But for the purpose of the class, I'm gonna be smoothing everything out, and I'm gonna sculpt everything from scratch. So all this entire mask is gonna be sculpted from scratch. But other stuff, like if I already have like a secondary stuff, like a hair, head, and some of the neck stuff, I'm gonna just reuse whatever I can. So, but let's go through this process. I already exported the base mesh. I'm gonna just open again my scene, the ray scene. This one, and then let's bring a stand here. So I have this model in there. Let me just double check if this is the new one or the old one. Yeah, this is the new one. I'm gonna even delete the other one so I'm not confused. And then I'm gonna bring Stan here. So just gonna click this star, can be any of those primitives, and just import in here. Let's bring from OBJ Stan to Ray. That's the little guy in there. And then gonna click our Ray model, go to Subtool, and then Append. I'm gonna select it in here. So you're gonna see it's in a different position. It's kind of like it's all the way far up there, right? So I'm gonna be, this can be a little tricky sometimes, because if I sculpted something in HD in that position that's so far, sometimes you can have some trouble translating the HD information, and then it looks different, you know. It's like it can look a little bit more faint than originally. For positioning like that, it should be fine actually. If I just move just like you know, it's like vertically like that. But if you have something rotated, sometimes you can get in trouble, you know. It's like if you're trying to project re-import into something that was completely like facing the other way around, sometimes the HD can look a little different, you know. It's like more washed out. Or if you pose your character, you know, it's like it can look a little weird. So I would avoid posing the character in here. I would use like Maya to pose it, and just keep as neutral as possible here, right? So, but for this, for the purpose here, I'm just gonna bring it stand down. So you're just gonna bring the model all the way down. So I'm gonna press, it can be like Q, actually W, E, or R, right? Like for those move, scale, and rotate. So then you get to this mode here, and I have stand selected, but the center is actually in the center of the universe here. So I'm just gonna press Alt, and then click this little guy here. So it goes to the center of that model. And then now I'm gonna turn off my perspective, just make sure you have everything lined up, and I'm gonna drag it down, right? So I'm gonna just bring it here, and I'm gonna try to match as well as possible. The thing is, like, the scale is slightly different. So I might have some differences in the translation of my HD detail. this is something you have to keep in mind, of course, that you have to keep like a constant scale, right? I would have to do the opposite here and then bring this guy here down in scale if I had something like this. But I think what I'm gonna do, because I think the head size, it's a better size for this guy. So I think I'm gonna keep the same and then just scale. Although I already have all my settings for stand correct. So I don't know, maybe I can scale one down or the other one up. It's not the, yeah, it's gonna have some difference in the HD detail, but it shouldn't affect that much. And even if it affects, I'm gonna be resculpting a lot of stuff by hand anyway. So I'm gonna just scale up stand here just slightly and see what we get. So it's not a huge difference. Still should get plenty of detail. So now when I'm trying to match stuff like that, I normally go to the nose and I use it as a pivot point, right? So I'm just gonna click this guy here, press Alt, hold it, and then just move it. So I'm gonna move the pivot around there. And then I can actually rotate because he has a little bit of rotation in his face when I model it. So around here, let's see with the transparency. So the eye looks a little higher. So maybe I'm getting just a little bit. Yeah, it's a little tricky because what's happening is that he has a longer nose in there. But I think it's a better idea if I actually can match the eyes and it close similar to the scale of to the width of the head as well and ears, right? So I'm just gonna try to do kind of like an average here. So from here, his mouth was more open. So that means that he probably gonna need to be a little bit bigger, and then the nose has to be a little bit lower like that. Actually, this is the other model. So let me just go back here a little bit. Make sure I have everything set like that. Let's make sure that everything is fine. Yeah. So let's just see. It's a little tricky because he's opened his mouth a lot here. So the chin is around there. I would say like it's a good average, I would say. See, in terms of ear, if it's enough. The ear's a little lower too, but yeah, they're different characters, so I cannot expect to have anything like a great matching here, but it's close enough. Let's say this is kind of like an average that works. So they're kind of like overlapping in there. So now my whole job is to actually project everything, but they're very different models, right? So this is the process that's a little bit painful. That's probably gonna take me some time to do this. But what I'm gonna do here, actually, I'm not gonna change the ears that much. I'm not gonna be like doing a super precise projection because I just want like the overall shape of it, and then I can sculpt it back in when I have all the model with all the HD details and everything. The lowest resolution I'm gonna be basically using to do a lot of changes in there. So let me just check if the topology is actually working for symmetry in here. So let's try just to use here. Sometimes ZBrush has trouble, like if it's not like, if the center line is not perfect, you get this weird artifacts. No, it's actually pretty good. Is it working? What's it seem like? Let's see. Let's hide everything here. So it stands right there. Let's see if the symmetry is working. Deformation, and then smart resim. Oh, that's interesting. It seems like that model is not symmetrical. That's bizarre because I'm working with symmetry for a long time. So I don't know what just happened here. I'm actually afraid of using that model and not having a symmetrical model. Let's just do a test in here. So if we go to this guy here, and let's try to make it symmetrical. What's going on? I would be very surprised because I'm using the same mesh like for a long time. Yeah, you see, like it's symmetrical. That's bizarre. Why is it working alone, but it's not accepting here? Unless I had something. No, it's the correct model that's selected. So that's the kind of stuff, the type of little bugs that sometimes you cannot foresee what's going to happen. So deformation, and then smart resim. Yep. Nope. That's so awesome. Let's try that again. Let me just delete this and see if something else happened. I don't know. So append. Let's try to get that guy. And head right there. Sample it like that. Now let's see if we can resim it. Make sure that's selected, okay? That's so bizarre. Deformation, and then smart resim. That worked, okay, cool. I don't know what happened before, guys. I'm surprised. Okay.
Probably, Chris, probably was the scale.
The scale?
When you scale the model,
Uh-huh.
sometimes ZBrush gets crazy with when you append a model to another scene, it gets the scale of the scene. And maybe when you scale it, you can't resim it. It happened to me once in a while, but I didn't know it was that.
Oh,
Just
man.
I thought about it. But
No,
if you rescale it, try to do it again. Maybe it won't work.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's see what's going to happen here. It's a good test bench, I guess. But a good way to report this as well to Pixologic. So let's see, for example, if I do just like a test here, right? So without the scale for now, let's do that. Let's get the smart resymmetry. So that's working. So let's try now with the scale and see. I hope it doesn't break because I don't want to have to deal with this. And then let's turn off perspective so we don't have it. Reset the rotation. So press Alt and then click little rotation. So it resets it. And then let's try again. So bring it forward. Going to move to the nose. Going to rotate a little bit. And now we're going to see what's going to happen. Let's try it a different way. For example, do I have symmetry on right now? No, it's off. Okay. I thought like it could be something like that. And so let's scale it up around here and call it done. So we don't need to worry too much about it. Something like that. And then let's try to scale it again. Let's see what happens. Information. Smart resim. Yeah, that's fine. I don't know what happened before.
Yeah, go figure. ZBrush is crazy.
Yeah, I know. That's so bizarre. Yeah, anyway.
Maybe just you have masked something.
Yeah, maybe.
That time.
Yeah, maybe like something escaped, like instead of pressing Alt, I press Control and mask something, but I would highly doubt it, but I don't know. Something happened in there. Anyway, so let's go from here, since now we have something that actually worked. And you're going to push the pocket here. Look at me. Now I just broke it again. And then I actually I'm paranoid. I'm going to have to double check before I do anything. Smart sim. Yeah, working. Okay, cool. So now this is the whole manual labor that I was talking about, right? And this is the boring part because reprojecting stuff is not fun at all. But we have to do it. So I'm going to start this and then so we can have actually a fun next week. We have to get through this boring stuff. Now for the eye, it's going to be interesting because like the eye position is very high. I think you're going to have to bring the eyes down first. I'm not going to deal with this like that distance, right? So around here should be much better. And just to guarantee, man, Jesus Christ, do I have to do this every time? Let's try that. I really don't want to go like off geometry, off the symmetry here. So just want to make sure everything is good. So that's good to go. So now we can start some sculpting. Let me just, everything is symmetrical. Let's save this file before we do anything else. And let's go to ZBrush, study. Actually, going to put like reprojection. Again, the objective is to actually get the model to match the other one. So we can actually bring, once everything is conformed to the ray model, we bring this one back to that scene. And then we should, in theory, actually be able to reuse a lot of that stuff. But don't worry about what's in there because, again, I'm going to be re-sculpting everything for you guys to see. And then let's see. So let's start this. Very broad brushes here. So I'm going to start with around the eyes in here. And that's going to be a tricky area because I want to make sure that my eyelids are in a fairly close position to the original in there. And obviously the eyes I had before, they had a better curvature than I have in this very rough model I have now. But I'm going to bring them back a little bit. Actually, forward. Let's see if I have the right position. Yeah, let's get this one slightly close enough to that position, because that area gonna have to actually mask out and not move too much at all. So just gonna have them covering, and then I'm gonna be tweaking in the next couple of weeks, like all this stuff constantly. But I wanna have something that's fairly close to that, just enough. And then this one here, I'm gonna use the move topological, and I'm just gonna move like using the alt, pressing alt, just to go like towards the normals, right? Like facing the camera. And then I'm just gonna move it up slightly like that. And again, this area here, I don't need to worry too much about reprojecting as long as I have something close, because I didn't go to a point where everything was completely refined, right? Like the forms are kind of rough still. So I'm gonna really project this external areas here, but the eyelids are gonna be reusing whatever I had there before, so I don't need to do it all again. So I'm gonna just get them close enough, and then from that point on, I can just like sculpt later on. But this area here is important to actually get the projection correct. So I'm just gonna be pulling like using the normal. And then this is gonna be the tricky one here, because now I'm gonna have to bring that whole area down, right? So let me just bring the eyelid down slightly, because Stan had like a very, very high eyelids in there. So I'm gonna just bring it down a little bit like that. And now let's select my topology. So basically like just click W, E, or R, right, to go to this mode. And then since I have my topology here, you know, well-defined, like I have like some loops around the eyelids. So I'm just gonna click Control and then click and drag around here. And then I get that nice little loop in there, right? So now I can just reverse the mask, like Control and click outside. So it's reversed. And then if you wanna keep seeing stuff without the mask, you can always press Control H, and then you basically hide the mask, but it's still there. So if I try to move anything here, the mask is working, but it's just hidden, you know, Control H just to hide it. So I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna go back to this model and see, kind of like try to figure out here the positions, like, you know, it's like roughly. But being careful in a way, because we wanna try to preserve some of the detail we had before, just in case if you wanna reuse stuff. But this entire area probably gonna have to be redone anyway to show you guys, but I'm gonna try to go with a broad brush like that, so it's not like too crazy, you know. Try to avoid like too much like zigzagging, you know, like stuff like that. So like try to bring like the whole form down more, or like in a broad way. So let's see how far down I have to go. I can even turn on the transparency here. And then let's just compare. I have to go down a fair amount. So around here. This is going to be like the trickiest part to project. Normally eyes and obviously the mouth, right? Like corners and stuff like that. So again, with the topological here, I'm going to press Alt and just like try to conform using just, you know, pulling and pushing towards the normals. So something like that. And then we're going to bring this one back. See how much we need. That area. There. And then nose, let's try to match that slightly. So bring this one up. Yeah, the move towards the normal is the best thing, man. I love it. You can just like click and drag and get a lot of stuff much faster. So let's get that. Oh, let's switch models. Let's get back to this. So I'm gonna just smooth it out a little bit. Nostrils are tricky because it depends on the topology of your model. Sometimes it can get very tricky to project inside of it. So it's the kind of stuff that if the thickness of this little wall in here is not the same, you might get in trouble projecting it. So I'm going to try to get like a little closer to it. And I can even try to mask out the nostril, the inside part of the nostril. So it's not like something that accidentally can become a mess, you know? I get this one around here. Now let's move on to the cheeks. So those are big areas we're gonna have to move. So towards the normal again. And he has a big smile. So a lot of that stuff with the smile, of course, if I try to neutralize, I'm gonna obviously get some stretching going on. But again, I gotta use whatever I can use. If I cannot use stuff, I don't use it, so it's fine. Oh, I have the masking there. Just gonna unmask it so I can actually move that. It's a little bit smoothing. And then let's go back to this area here. That's gonna be a tricky one. Let's see the nasolabial where it is. So it's not too far actually, because I actually I use Stan because he had a similar facial expression, right? He had already a smile, which was a much bigger smile, but at least like the certain positions are the same. So that's the cool thing. If you have multiple models, you know, for example, when I started Michelangelo, I think I started using Dick Smith. I used the Rick Baker one to start with because the pores are a little bit like less old, right? Like a little bit more of a younger guy. So yeah, in this case here, if you have a similar facial expression from another model, is even better. So the thing is, like, all my models, like, they are all toothless, right? Like for decades. And then now I have this nice little set of teeth that I modeled like a month ago or so. And now it seems like all my models want to smile just to show up the new bling. So all my models, like all the demons, you know, I'm gonna make some demons with the beautiful teeth. It's gonna be cool. So the projection thing is gonna be partially ZBrush automatic projection. You're gonna get most of the stuff with it. But when you get to tricky areas like this, we're gonna be using a lot of the manual projection, the projection brush. So yeah, that's gonna be a way to get some of this detail a little bit with more control, right? And lots of masking. There are lots of ways of masking stuff to prevent like all those spikes that you get in ZBrush when you project stuff. For example, like you can select all the edges and then expand that area and get those edges to be locked when you do the projection. Very important, for example, like if you have holes in your model, right? That's another reason why I cover everything. So most models are all watertight, because if you have a pocket, it's easier for ZBrush to recognize all those forms and go inside of the pocket and do the projection than having something that has holes, and then all of a sudden you're fighting to prevent those spikes that are created when you're trying to project in the edges, right? So it's always tricky. But let's get this one close enough. And again, like the model, as you can tell, I mean, it's not like a perfect match to the likeness or anything like that. It's just good enough to start this process of reprojecting so we can actually go faster from this point on. And it's a nice little, you know, you're probably gonna get some tricks in here when I start doing the projection. So it might be useful for you in the future. So now the lips, let's see what we have in there. It's a fairly different model. So let's see what we get. So it's the hybrid. Oh my God. I have to start playing with those models, man, like mixing and matching every one of them. You probably saw on my Instagram, I posted some time ago, was Giger with Rick Baker's beard. That was pretty funny. And Rick Baker didn't like it very much because he was like, oh, I hope you don't, no, actually he made a joke. He said like, I'm glad it's not the opposite, that you're putting Giger's hair on me, because Rick takes pride in his hair. That was funny. Let's go back here. And then another thing I can do, obviously, here, so if I don't want to mess up that stuff, just mask everything. But the lower, right, the lower area. So the way I'm doing it, the same way I did with the eye bags in here, that you just click the edge and then press Control and then drag, right? I'm doing the same here. So basically, like you click Control and then you drag, instead of like going up, you go down. And then when you get to a certain spot in there, it starts like opening up. and then I get like just the lower part and select it now. So I use this a lot as well. And now it's easier for me to just control the lips and bring everything up here. It's like it goes up a fair amount. And I'm gonna keep a lot of stuff I already had like in the inside of the mouth, but the pocket I might have to raise it a little bit. It looks a little low. But I'm gonna worry more about the external forms, right? Like what I'm gonna be projecting, not so much like the internal stuff. The internal can be pretty much in the same spot for the most part. Bring this one up. The shape of the lips is different now. Stan had this very cartoonish kind of shape when he smiled, but Ray has a little bit more of a more expected, right? I'm not going to say normal because we are all abnormal. Human beings are very, very different, which is like the magic to me. Like when I doing portraits, to me, it's a bunch of things, right? It's this challenge, of course, to try to nail something. First, like to make it alive, right? Like to me, it's the most important thing. If you try to create a character, make it look alive, look like it's someone who's thinking or breathing, you know. That's the most important part. But the exercise, you know, is like capturing someone's soul and likeness. It's very, very interesting. But the part that actually drives me to do more of those portraits, it's because I have a ton of freedom, you know. I thought in the past that if I'm going to do a portrait, there's no point of simply trying to recreate something that's already there. Why not take a picture, right? The whole old argument, like, why don't you take a picture? It's like, well, first, the person is dead, so I cannot take a picture of Michelangelo, for example, right? You can recreate the guy, but you cannot take a picture of him anymore. Or back in the day, you cannot take a picture either. You could do a painting or a drawing, right? So I always thought about this stuff, you know, it's like, well, it's boring, blah, blah, blah. But then when I start understanding that I don't need to do like a perfect match, but I can create a very convincing impression of the person, that's what drove me to do more of those portraits, you know. You're going to find like people out there doing portraits much more like precise than my portraits. In terms of the likeness, going to be spot on. Because people use all possible resources, right? Like it's totally fair. I mean, like you're gonna use like blueprints and things like that. But if you wanna train your eye, I mean, like the best way is to actually try to explore and push as far as you can without using all the other stuff that you use in the studio. You know, it's like you do this professionally, and you know for a fact if you do this professionally that you're not learning anything with that process. It's just like a very automatic process. It's like if you teach a monkey can do that. You know. Matching blueprints, of course, exaggerating here, but matching blueprints and, you know, it's like using scanned data and stuff like that. But if you want to do something cool that you actually feel some fulfillment, right? It's about like really trying to create something that looks alive or someone who looks alive, you know? And then in this process of painting an impression of that person, I have all this freedom of creating all the in-betweens, right? And what I mean by that is like, all the pores and everything you see. Now let's go back to this guy here because it's the most recent one, right? But let's go back here. So Chris, projects. Let's go back to Stan. So,
sorry, Chris, if
yes.
I'm interrupting you. Alfonso, I don't know how to pronounce his
there's a plugin, right?
Yeah, he says no. He says, did you use? Have you used ever Zirac?
No, I never used. I heard this from in the previous group as well. That there's this magic little plugin that actually, and I saw some demos actually that just like animates and shrink wraps the whole thing automatically, right? You just point some. I think you put like some points of correspondent points between the matches, and it kind of does the entire thing for you.
Exactly.
Yeah, so if you guys want to go through like and get this stuff using that, I have no problem with it. You know, use anything you guys want. I'm probably gonna start doing this soon, but I have to get familiar with the software first. But yeah, thank you so much. I totally get that. Like it's pretty awesome based on the demos I've seen. So again, like all this stuff here, right? Like it's the contradiction of the stuff I'm doing here. I'm trying to recreate something that looks real, right? That looks like the person. And but it's not like, I'm not using like a one-to-one correspondence between the two models. So it's something that looks realistic, but it's not a one-to-one translation. So everything you see here is idealized, right? Like I mentioned before, sometimes I get like some spots like that that are very characteristic of the person, like a mole or something like that. Or but then everything else here, I have a ton of freedom to do whatever I want, because I'm just like reimagining that person, right? So if in the reference I noticed that he has like some little blood vessels in those areas, I'm not going to spend my time matching one-to-one, because that's the boring part to me, you know. But if I can actually get the impression of that in a way that looks realistic, that's basically what I'm going to do, you know. So unless you get someone really anal, you know, it's like going to be like, oh my God, you forgot to match that blood vessel. It's slightly to the side, you know. You're not going to see that. You're going to see a model that looks realistic, that can hold up from like up close like that, because instead of like trying to reproduce what we are seeing, we're actually trying to recreate in a very convincing way by understanding the structures of the skin, by understanding how areas of blend, you know, it's like between going from one area that's just wrinkles to an area that's like wrinkles plus pores. And then there's another area has like pores stretched in a certain way, you know. If you can get those areas and understand like the dynamics of the skin, then you can actually create something that looks realistic and holds up close like that, without having like this boring thing that's basically like just reproducing what you're seeing, right? We keep that part like just for the likeness itself. So we kind of try to reproduce and create the likeness the best you can. But all the in-betweens, all those, the between the lines, right? Like that's the part I keep the freedom to myself. I don't, you know, I'm not going to blame you guys if you don't want to do that way. But I have a ton of freedom, you know, so I can just go to town with the detail without worrying too much. And that's where the style lives as well, right? If you remove everything from the style, you're going to get something sterile at the end. And you see this a lot, you know, it's like you see beautiful models that are completely sterile. There's no style, because it's just like a scientific kind of approach, right? It's using scan data, it's using blueprints and all kinds of stuff. But then when you don't use that, you rely on your own instincts, right? So over the course of your life, artistic life, you build up like those libraries in your brain, right? Like you have like a certain way you sculpt noses, and you always start that way when you're idealizing something, right? Instead of reproducing it. If you do something from your head, you're probably gonna have like a favorite way of sculpting that nose. Maybe it's a nose that you saw in a Greek sculpture, and you really like that style, you know, it's like, and you're gonna try to do something like that. But at the end, after doing many times, you have your own way of sculpting noses that, if you are not looking at any references, is probably pretty unique in a way, you know. So if I'm saving some of that information to myself, like to fill up all the gaps that I'm not seeing, for example, like the pictures I'm seeing of Stan online, they're all low resolution. I'm not having like any access to high resolution stuff. And at the same time, I'm trying to create super high resolution detail, right? So that's the contradiction and the beauty of the whole process, is that you're actually reimagining someone. You're not trying to simply recreate a one-to-one reproduction. You know, it's a lot of room for creativity in the middle of this whole thing. So that's the part that fascinates me. You know, it's to create something that people can actually believe it's there, but and also having fun with it. You know, otherwise I would be bored by now. Like I did a couple of those, and I would be bored. But I'm not bored. I'm just like excited to first like to keep improving, right? Like my observation skills, and also improving the shader networks and things like that. You know, it's like every new model, I change a little thing here and there, and then eventually going to be revisiting all of them, and then trying to update to the latest shaders, that, you know, latest lighting or whatever works, and try to get a series of portraits. You know, obviously they are all like very boring poses right now. They are like completely symmetrical. Not symmetrical like in the details, but poses are symmetrical. But my plan is to actually pose them, you know, like maybe add some hands. You know, I still have to model some decent hands, and have a series of portraits I can actually print out like in high resolution, and hopefully be people going to be able to actually look from very up close, you know, and you still see all those tiny little details in there, which again, like it should be pretty believable, but at the same time, it shouldn't be the exact copy of the person, right? It's just mostly an impression of that person. But yeah, you guys are free to ask questions. I mean, like this is gonna take me the rest of the class just to keep doing this, so I can talk to you guys while I'm doing this, and I'm gonna start projecting soon. But feel free to ask any questions about what we just spoke about. Oh, and by the way, I saw like a bunch of you guys are posting already in the forum in our group on Facebook, and I saw the work. I was planning to actually comment, but the thing is, like, I was in zombie mode the whole day today. I actually had this. I had to be a judge today for this challenge. That there's a conference in Brazil that happens every year now. It started last year called Unhide Conference, and it's pretty cool. It's the biggest in Brazil. And I went last year, it was pretty amazing. So this year they decided to give away some tickets to the conference, and they actually made a little challenge. So people are submitting stuff for, you know, for a couple of weeks now. And then today I had to judge it. I was the only judge, and I had to judge 26 works in about 1 hour. So it was crazy. And because of the difference in time zone, it was actually 11 in the morning there, but it was 7 in the morning here. So that means I woke up at 6. And if you look at the time I posted those renders yesterday, was 2 in the morning. So I got 4 hours of sleep. So I was actually in zombie mode the entire day. And I told my wife I'm gonna come home a little earlier and take a nap. So right before the class started, I took an hour and a half nap. So I'm kind of reset right now. That's why I didn't spend too much time other than posting memes and making fun of people, trolling people on the internet today, but which is my default mode.
I thought you were judging the volleyball match in front of your office.
Yeah, so, oh, there you go. Yeah, it was like, it was fun, man. Like the winners are actually really good. I mean, like one guy, he did a whole animation, actually. He animated this, the death, like basically like a skeleton riding a horse with full on like, oh man, I keep clicking stuff here. Full on class simulation and everything, rigging, everything. The guy did like in about a couple of weeks, I think a month. So I was like, oh man, okay. I don't know if he reused this model or if he got it from scratch. It would be more impressive if it was from scratch, but the amount of work that went to this, I mean, I'm gonna have to give this guy something, right? So I picked him, but the other one I picked is this guy here. I'm gonna show you actually, just out of curiosity. So he has the, let's see, here. Let's go to my Instagram. It was pretty impressive, actually, what he did. So his name is Arthur. He's a Brazilian guy, obviously. Arthur Duque, right? So he modeled this guy here as a chimp. And this is basically like was my favorite piece of all of them. And the theme was basically create like a creature, right? Like some kind of like a mixed creature or whatever. And then he created this bald chimp with some kind of like deformations in his arms and stuff, but so subtle. But everything about the dynamics of the pose and the, you know, it's like, it looks so good, man. I really love the model. So I picked, he was the winner of the entire thing. So he got like, yeah, there's problems and stuff you see, but I mean, like, you know, the presentation and everything, it's really good. He got really good. So he got a free ticket. So I was happy for him. Let's go back here. So at this point here, I'm going to start doing some projection already. And then let's get some of this stuff done. And then obviously I'm going to keep projecting. And then over the weekend, I'm not going to be touching the HD details yet because I want to basically like wait for you guys. So don't worry about that. And I'm going to put this model kind of like in the shelf a little bit during the weekend. But then in the next weekend, we already going to have the HD geometry going on. So I'm probably going to be working in filling up the whole area, you know. Again, like my plan is always to expose you guys to the techniques and how I'm creating stuff, but not necessarily submitting you guys to the entire repetition process, you know, because that's the boring part for what I'm doing here, right? If I had to do this in every single session, repeat stuff, that would be super boring. But it's still like the most important stuff, like to really sculpt a large area. I'm planning to do this live with you guys, so you get like exactly how to do it for wrinkles and pores and everything. And then from that point on, it's going to be just a repetition of that process, but not necessarily going to be like, you know, doing this right in front of you guys constantly. So let's do like some projection of those large areas first. Just going to smooth it out a little bit, just to make sure we get stuff in place. And so I'm going to start with an area like that. Let's get maybe like the nose a little closer as well. Close enough, but again, like nostril is going to be a tricky one. Get that around. And we're going to mask this a good amount, actually. This, the base a little bit more. So let's do a little projection in here. Let's get, I'm actually going to subdivide this mesh. And then I'm going to try to subdivide it and get a little bit of the projection and a little bit, just one subdivision level higher, like that. And because we have like 69, I might go even higher after I do the first pass of projection and then project it again with a higher level. So just going to mask the cheeks here. And before I do that, it's important, for example, like if you click Control, you're under the selection mode, right? If you go to brush, then you're going to have those the auto masking, and it's good if you can use the back face mask here, because I don't want to be at risk of like selecting the inside of the mouth or something like that. So I'm just going to select whatever I'm seeing here from this angle. So I'm going to do this. Let's see how far you are from the side of the nose in here. Maybe we can get something all the way here and around here. So I'm not going to go too close to the eye just yet. Let's just get like the large areas. Just as a test, let's run this projection and see what we can get here. Something like that. And I don't know how far we are in the chin here, but let's try to project that. That's a test too. You can just like project. If it doesn't work, you just undo it. So we're just going to reverse this. And we have that in the background. Let's go to our project all. So it's pretty far in certain areas in here, right? Like those ones are kind of far. Let's see the rest in there. If you projected, okay, it seems like it was okay. So what I can do from here, I can actually just, even without undoing it, you just smooth out those areas and use the brush to go back a little bit and just smooth. I'm smoothing it, just make sure that things are not like too different, right, between the models. So I'm gonna just bring this one closer and then smooth it out. And let's try to project it again. So now it's a little closer, right? So got some stuff in place. Let's just use the solo here just to compare. Seems like it's okay. So I already got a lot of stuff in there. So let's move to the large areas and then, oops, sorry. And then deal with let's just edit and then redo. And deal with the finer stuff later. So we're just gonna reverse in here. Actually, just like, let's do it manually. Let's just mask this area all the way here. Let's see how much we can get. And maybe like the side of the head already. And again, ears are gonna preserve it as much as possible what I had before. So I'm not gonna be projecting one-to-one because of the amount of folds you have in there. And sometimes it's a pain in the butt. It's just, you know, to save some time. I could potentially do it and of course, like get everything perfect, but you have to pick up your battles, right? Like it's not like it's the most important part. So project all. Let's see. So you see, I got the same stuff. It's because the surface was too far from the original. I'm gonna have to actually just go back in there, get a little closer, and then I always push towards the normal and then smooth it out a little bit. Same around there. I could have like used the transparency to really get close to the surface and everything, but you see like it's easy to just do that and then smooth it out and then do a projection again. That's closer. I got this little area here. And this way, larger area. Done, done, done. Let's see what we get. It's much nicer. And then let's see some of the tricky stuff now. Let's move to some trickier areas, like lips. I think lips is going to be fine. We just have to set up that little corner in there. I have to check like his jowls in here, if it's in a fairly decent position in relation to the previous model, right? So we can check the topology. Seems like it's going to be okay. And then let's see. Let's move to some other areas. Let's just, if I show only this model right now, that's basically what we have in terms of progress with the topology. Oh, see, I got some holes in there. So let's just select those ones individually and then just pull them out. Got cancer. And then there's another spike right there. Then reverse, then I'm gonna pull it out, smooth. Very roughly. Oops, too much. Guy. And then this guy. Oh, got some holes in there too. Let's do that. Oh, let's project those ones first. Project all. Make sure we fix those areas first. Solo, so those are good. And then just do those ones. Oops. Little pinching there, but it's the back of the head, so I'm not too worried about it. Oh, look at that guy. There you go. That's good. All right. So this point here, let's say if you look at solo, so that's what we got projected. So it's most of it, right? But now it's the tricky part. The tricky parts are the mouth, like I said before, and then let's see, I have some stuff inside of the mouth as well. My polygroups should be in place for that model. Basically, this is basically the default that came with the model. But let's see if I have some different polygroups in here. If I look at if I click the auto groups with UVs, yeah, seems like they're fairly the same. So now I can actually mask certain things and just ignore them for now. So I'm just going to eliminate completely. Let's see. Let's keep the mask first. Let's do that. And then what else we can get here to project? Let's see. Eyelids. Ears we're going to be ignoring for now. And then lips. And then the side of the mouth I'm going to be ignoring for now. And the nostrils. Yeah, I'm going to ignore the nostrils for now because later we can just like do that. And then I'm going to just use this mask here so it's easier for me to control what I'm projecting. So let's turn on the perspective again. And let's switch to turn off the solo. And let's do some work around the eyes. So that's going to be the tricky part right here. So again, I'm going to just make sure that I have my mask, right? I remember I switched in here to back face mask. Because I want to make sure I'm not masking anything inside there. I want to project just the exterior area, so just this area here. So let me make sure I don't have anything selected. Just going to try to project this entire area here and see what I can get. Just close enough, but not quite right there. So I'm going to go around here carefully. Get that. And then let's see if we can get a little bit more of the nose as well. See if I can get this entire area projected or if it's going to be too crazy. Okay, reverse, and then let's switch to solo so we can actually see what's going on. And let's try to project and see what we get. Not terrible. Yeah, we got a lot of stuff. Got that. And then around here, let's see this band in here, if I actually did it correctly before or not. I'm gonna see it now. Oh yeah, now it's projected. So we did fairly a good chunk of stuff already. And like I said, like that's why I didn't go too far with the topology, or not topology, with the refinements of the forms, right? Because I want to make sure I'm projecting stuff first before I do anything else. So I can actually keep tweaking the model in sculpting from that point on with a decent topology, right? Let's do that as well, and then project. Okay, got the nicer result. So let's see if I can get those little areas here slightly in a better shape. And again, I'm using like the back face mask just to prevent like accidentally projecting stuff I don't want to, right? See, I got a little problem right there. So I'm gonna just avoid that little area for now. And then later I can just see what's going on with it and then just project in there. So I'm gonna just smooth it out. Let's see if I can do that. Yeah, so I can actually keep that one the way it is. And again, I'm trying to reuse most of the eyelids that I had before. So just gonna sculpt a little bit. But this stuff here is in a good shape for me to start sculpting from now on. I have the external forms already. So everything that's involving the folds, for example, like I have to make sure that this thickness here is convincing, right? I cannot go too crazy with like making it super thick or too thin. This point is in a little bit on the thin side, so I can actually tweak it to make it a little bit thicker. I can use some inflate brush with a lot of care because of the inflate brush. The problem with it is that if you use in areas like that, like by default, the inflate brush has an intensity of 10, right? And it's very dangerous when you use a 10 because sometimes you inflate something, you're just like getting something like this, right? I'm gonna exaggerate, of course. But I was like, oh my God, it looks great because I mean, I got a nice little pinch in there. Maybe I went too far, but let's do that again, like more careful. Oh, okay, got a nice little pinch in there. It looks great. And then let's just go to our display properties and then turn on double so I can see the back face. And then let's just hide the back of the head to see what's going on in there. And then, yeah, it didn't destroy it because I didn't go too crazy, but sometimes what can happen, I can really exaggerate for you to see here. You do something like that, right? You go in the back face and now that's what you get. You get like this intersection of forms in here, right? That now is completely screwed. So you have to smooth it out from the inside to be able to get that little crease to read correctly. Because if you leave anything with interpenetration like that, when you try to export the displacement map, that's gonna be a mess. Sometimes like the displacement map is generated with like all those white lines that basically like they cross the entire mesh, you know. Sometimes the map has those streaks, you know, it's like it looks like striped just because of the interpenetrations and stuff. So you have to prevent that, and especially in the UVs, you know, it's like if you have something funky in the UV, ZBrush is very sensitive to that. ZBrush is very well behaved if you do everything kind of perfectly, right? So if you have like a UV layout that's perfect, ZBrush is not going to give you too much shit about it. But then if you have anything that's a little bit far from perfect, ZBrush is going to start crying, and then it can become a nightmare sometimes. So yeah, be careful with you know, your meshes. Make sure when you model something in Maya, for example, you keep the mesh integrity, right? Like you always run the diagnosis in there, and make sure you're sending something that's not full of like, you know, end guns or things like that, because then ZBrush is going to get a little confused. Even to import the base mesh is going to be asking you to convert to triangles and stuff like that, you know. So make very sure that you have that okay. I'm just going to smooth this out. I'm going to bring it up. Gotta try to pay attention to the flow of the edges here, so I'm not stretching things too much. And then smooth this as well. Also for my topological move brush, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna go to auto backface mask, right? Because I don't want to move anything inside of it. The topological brush is actually pretty good at trying to prevent that, but sometimes you get some of the inside stuff affected as well, so it's going to prevent that. So let's do this. Smooth it out. Bring it out. Let's see.
Chris.
Yes.
Can you show us a little the difference between the previous mesh and this one, the topology?
Which one?
The previous one and this one that you are reprojecting. Like,
Oh, you want to see the topology of it?
yes, please.
Yeah, ZBrush just now we entered this mode that it doesn't show the wireframes.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna reboot this file, basically like reopen it. I'm gonna save it first, and then I can show you the comparison for you.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Wait, Chris.
Yes.
You don't need to reboot it. Just click on the line exactly where you are, polyframe. There is a fill, there is white.
Oh, there you go. See, I never used that.
Sometimes I
don't even notice this, man.
when I found out about that, it was like, oh my god, I can't believe they put a button here.
Dude, that's so weird because it's a tiny little.
I don't know which one is worse. Is this one or the first when you used the surface, the noisemaker, that button to get texture? It was like a little button round inside the noisemaker. I hated that.
No, man, thank you so much. You see, I have to do the class with you guys. Yeah, that's amazing, man. I never noticed, like, because it's pretty faint, right? Like by default, you don't see. It's amazing. Anyway,
click this shit.
Yeah, the other day I was like, I have to reboot the shit. I thought, man, oh my god. But anyway, let's look at those models here. So let's just make a duplicate of this one, and I just move this one out. Let's reset this, and no symmetry. So basically, this one is the new one. No, actually, this is the old one, the one you guys are using. And this one here is the, so I'm gonna just do this, let's see. Nope. So Shift S, and then let's switch to this one here. So that's the difference right now. Let's get a little closer, let's see. Let's get that, so this is the new one. You see I have more topology around here. Here is a little stretched. I can actually try to reorganize those, probably like in, I can even use Maya to actually use the relax one to get some of this stuff a little bit better distribution. But around here, that's pretty good. You know, that's basically what I want to have in terms of the resolution in there. So let's keep it this way, and let's Shift S to bake it, and then go switch to this one here. And that's the one we have right now, right? So this guy. So this is the one you guys have, and this is basically the one I have. So let's see, Control N, Control, oops. Do I have both? I didn't bake it. Oh, I'm an idiot. So, okay, now it's baked. Let's see if this one works now. Oh, it doesn't. That's funny. It's not baking with, yeah, now it's baked. That's so bizarre. Anyway, ZBrush acting funny. Let's turn off that one. So that's basically what it is. Let's see. Yeah, in terms of the topology around the eyes in here, seems like the model you guys have over there, it has a better topology around this area, right? Like you're probably gonna get a little bit more detail in there. But when it comes to this area here, I have like a better density than this one. It doesn't look like much, but when I do the detailing, definitely I can get much more sharp details in there. I know, I would do like a test maybe, you know, it's like maybe I can do this over the weekend. That's how much I can get. But the other day I tried to go HD in this model you guys have, and I noticed that the pores didn't have the crispness, you know, like all the little details around them, it was not being represented completely. I was getting a little bit blurry details, but for this guy here, I actually get pretty good detail, you know. So that's basically what
very curious.
Yes.
Have you ever used Project Morph in Morph Target?
Oh, to use what?
Project Morph.
No.
In Morph Target. It's kind of like a relax brush in Maya's skull.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So which one is?
Please go to Morph Target menu.
Oh, the Morph Target. Okay.
Yeah. First, you have to store empty.
Okay.
For example, smooth the chin area.
So I'm gonna smooth this one. Okay. Oh, let's see.
You have to have a better topology.
Okay.
Okay. Then you can increase the morph, project morph the last slider.
Okay. Increase it
Increase it
all the way.
to the end. Yeah.
Okay.
It keeps your topology, but project all the previous sculpt on top of that.
That's so cool, man. That's another thing I didn't know. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's so good for relaxing your topology.
Yeah. Look at that. That's so cool, man. Yeah, normally like I'm still like a Maya user for most of my stuff, you know, and I keep going back and forth. But this would save definitely a lot of time, just like doing this. That looks awesome.
Yeah.
So if I switch back, basically that's what he did, but the form is in there.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, that's very cool. Great tip. Thank you, man.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's very cool. Let's see. What happened with my, oh, is this the correct model I'm working on? No, this is the old model. I'm actually, yeah, I'm just, I was testing the old one. So let's delete this one. I don't need it. And this is the original one we had. And then this is my new projection. So let's do this in this here. I'm gonna just smooth around there. Oh, first I'm gonna save the morph target. Morph target and then store, smooth. Yeah, it's gonna be cool to just like have a nicer. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Works very well too. Yeah, I wonder like this area here if you would do anything more interesting. Yeah, that's really cool. I had no idea. Oh, interesting that I'm having some penetration happening already, but it's expected because I didn't plan that much. I'm probably gonna have to pull this out a little bit with my topological brush. Slightly, yes. A little bit, and then probably pull this one in just a little bit. Of course, this one is conforming to the old eyeball, so I shouldn't be changing too much of it, but I'm gonna deal with this a little later. But yeah, like it didn't take too long. Actually, I thought it would take longer to project most of the stuff, but like most of it's already projected. So I can definitely finish it up tonight and have this model ready to go for next week. And then we can start like actually making the sweet stuff, like the fine detail, right? But I hope you guys are actually doing some renders already, maybe like some tests. I saw some of you posting online. Which is great. I'm gonna try to comment on some of them today, and so that's pretty awesome because that's what was missing actually in my previous class. It's like people got a little bit too timid with the renders. They got too caught up with the entire like surface detail, which is always awesome, of course, right? Like it's very tempting to just get caught up with that, but they kind of forgot to do more renders, you know. And like I said before, the only reason I tweaked this model and improved the likeness yesterday was because I was actually seeing the renders first, you know. It's the only way to actually judge things is by looking at renders. So that's what I did yesterday. Man, I'm loving this project morph thing. It's amazing. Yeah, it's really, really cool. I wonder what happened with his eye here. Let's investigate what's happening there. Let's go to my visibility and then hide. Let's invert this. So yeah, that's what happened right there. Look, you got a little bit trouble in there. So let's just smooth that out. Yeah, I got a little destroyed in there. One thing I could have done at the very beginning would be like a save a morph target for that, or at least like export the mesh in that new position. So I could actually re-import and then transform it to a morph target. But yeah, it shouldn't be too bad. Let's see. Let's recover that. Yeah, it should be good. And then a little bit more towards that. Just want to prevent that intersection happening. And because obviously, because like I said before, I mean, like you have to think about like all the collisions and things happening with the model, right? So in the case of Stan, we didn't have the those heavy lids, you know, it's like the extra fold on top. So basically, like his lids are pretty puffy in here. It had a lot of volume going on. But then it's obviously if you have some forms compressing those forms, you're gonna get them more flat. So it probably like if I go a little flatter here, it shouldn't be a bad thing because I'm thinking about the stuff that's actually compressing. So it should be a better match like that anyway. So let's get this one a little bit smoother. And yeah, I'm not gonna go super precise just now because we need to get these forms in place first. And let's make sure that this wrinkle in here, it's not something that's completely destroyed inside. We're gonna smooth it out actually and maybe like resculpt it. Because I wanna make sure that that unfolds and it's not something that's hard to control later on. So I'm just gonna get that. Let's get the move. Yeah, in this case here, I mean, like I'm gonna have to turn off my back face mask, otherwise it's not gonna allow me to do anything. So I'm just gonna do that. And later on, I'm gonna be refining that area, but just to unfold a little bit, because I wanna make sure I have control. We're gonna be working like when you get into details, basically like keeping very small areas visible, and then we work just in that little area and then move to the next one. But for now, I think it's going to be good enough. So let's see the nostrils. Actually, they have trouble right now. So let's see what we have in this guy here. Yeah, we got this area there. So let's try this. Let's click this, guys. Just keep the nostril visible, and this one as well. Let's see if we project this. I'm gonna have to actually pull it down that corner in there first. So let's reveal it. Let's pull it down like that. Match that area, and then up. Yeah, like I said, like if the wall is not the very similar thickness, you end up like having some very interesting artifacts happening. So let's try to project just this area here. Let's go again and just keep the nostril visible. And try again, let's see. Oops, did I project everything? It did, actually. Let's see. Yeah, I need this guy's here, not the rest. I'm just gonna mask this one just in case. And then do this. So now it seems like I got the nicer, cleaner. So let's reverse it. Reverse the mask and then just expand it slightly. Oh, actually, I see like I got some artifacts in there. Let's do it again. Especially if you get like too close to each other in here, ZBrush sometimes has a very hard time. So sometimes you have to play with the distance of the projection. So I'm gonna have to do that. Oh, where am I going? I'm not using any reference here at this point. Okay, there you go. Let me just increase my smooth, otherwise I'm not gonna do much. The tricky little area. But again, it's not like something that's completely essential for what I'm doing here. So even if I don't get the projection completely correct, I can simply, you know, it's like resculpt that area, no problem at all. So let's get this. And so now we're pretty close. Let's see what's missing here. So let's just smooth out that area. And here. And here. Let's do a projection of this area only. So I'm gonna hide that one, this one, and maybe we can hide something like that. So let's reverse it and then unhide it like that. And then let's try that, see what happens. Back all. Looks fairly clean. Just this little border now that needs a little work. So I'm going to do it again right here. Reverse and then project all. And looks pretty good. So at this point we got what? We got eyes, nostrils, mouth is not quite there yet. Again, like those little guys here, I'm not gonna be too worried about it. So I'm gonna just smooth out a little bit the inside, as you know, I keep working on this model anyway. And then ears, I can try to do later, just like to see if I can get a little bit closer to the original ones, but I'm gonna be reusing a lot of it anyway. So I guess like that's what I was intending to do today, like to just like project this entire thing, so I can keep going with it here, and then bore you guys a little bit more with my attempts to project this, or we can actually switch to something that any questions you guys have in relation to the past, like since today is the last lesson of this week. If you guys have anything that like any questions left from the previous 3 days, let's try to go back to those. You know, it's like I don't mind like saving this one and then exploring whatever you guys want to know about the other ones. If you have any questions, you know, just let me know and you can just revisit anything.
I just have a question about the eye thickness of the eyelids.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to know, is there any time during the class you are gonna talk about the thickness of the eyelids? Because I always have problem. Sometimes it gets too thick.
Yes.
Sometimes it's too thin.
Yeah, that's the thing. You know, it's like it depends of the person too, right? Like I've seen like some older people that you see like you have more. It's almost like they droop, right? They kind of like they come down, and then you see a little bit more from a larger area. And the younger people, you're gonna see much tighter against the eye. So we can do a little research. I mean, like I normally do visually, right? Like I don't have like the right thickness for it, especially considering I model a lot of old people. but it's a good point. You know, it's like we can take a look at that because at some point when we add the eyeball, I'm gonna be actually making it very tight against it. And I normally what I do when I get to the very border here of the eyelid, I normally sculpt this one to be a little higher to create a very thin kind of like a membrane that actually touches the eyeball. So since we're going to be doing that, we can actually revisit the thickness of the lid itself, you know, and see how much we're getting.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm actually, you know, it's like anything we can do to improve and to learn more about the, you know, the anatomy and stuff, I'm all for it. I mean, like learning about the distance between the iris was a different one for me the other day, you know, it's like, and it was brought up by one of the students, was Sven actually, who works with me at ILM. And he said like, oh, I never noticed that there is this, the distance between the irises, for example, it's pretty big, you know, it's like you normally have this impression that the distance between the eyeballs would be like 3 eyeballs, right? So you would have one eyeball, one in the middle, and then the other eyeball. But that's not true. There is a gap in between them. What the distance is, when it comes like 2 eyeballs that people say, is actually the distance between, you know, it's like if you calculate the eye using this corner here of the caruncula and then the external corner, then basically like if you measure those, then you should have a fairly, you know, close to a 3rd eye in here in the middle. But when it comes to the eyeball is smaller than that. So basically like you're gonna have like an eyeball and then another eyeball here in the middle and then a gap in between them. So that kind of information is very interesting. You know, it's like you never stop to think about it. You just assume it because you hear it, and then when you do it, like, oh, that's interesting. It's not what I thought. But I actually, when I did like in compare it to the models I had done before, by instinct you actually just do it. You know, it's like it looked correct. It was like pretty much like it's spot on to what it was supposed to be. But then you don't think about it. It's just like visually it looks better if you do it in a certain way, and so that's cool, you know. we can measure that, and we can look at even like for like different ages. If someone older actually has like thicker, to me they look always puffier. You know, it's like for older people, which is interesting because I don't know if there's a little bit of the gravity acting, and so basically like they droop a little bit, and they. But it's interesting to me because the skin itself of an older person, it gets very like it's almost like paper thin. If you get like a very old, especially with women. You see like the skin, it becomes like a paper thin. It's just like the pores that we are representing in here. They almost go away, you know, it's like it becomes just this thin skin with wrinkles and everything. You're still going to see pores in the nose, for example, but then here they start kind of like dissolving, you know, it's kind of weird. So everything gets very thin, and then the fat pads underneath the skin, they start shrinking as well until they almost completely disappear. So we start revealing more of the bone structure and everything. But then when it gets to the bags, I noticed like there's a puffiness, you know. So I don't know if it's if there's something about like I don't know if I'm just like completely throwing this out there, but I don't know if there's any type of like accumulation of like water or something, you know. It's like or maybe the fat tissue underneath the skin in those specific areas are preserved while everything else shrinks, you know. I don't know exactly what happens, but the fact is they look a little puffier than like a younger person for sure. And also like when we model like something in clay, right, you tend to actually define those lines and everything very sharp. So we read, for example, from a distance, when you have a nice lighting, you're gonna read that little line very sharp. But then in real life, there is a fair amount of like sharpness, of roundness to it. And then when you render it, for example, when I was rendering this guy, I was looking at some of the, let's see if I can find like a close one. Yeah, this one is a good one, I think. But you get this interesting speck that's kind of like, it looks right, you know. It's like, so basically like you keep the flatness on the top surface, and then you add that tiny little membrane, and then on the top you add the tear line, which is a separate object that I use. But around right here, it's normally you know, it's like you keep a little bit more round just to catch these nice highlights, you know. And it's not like you're dealing with an actual sculpture here, like that's just clay, like I said, that's meant to be easy to read, right, from distance. This is actually a more naturalistic kind of approach, so everything is a little bit more round, right? But yeah, but you see, like in this case here, I think based on the reference, his lids could be a little bit thicker, you know. Sometimes it's a matter of the positioning of the eyelashes as well. Sometimes like the surface itself looks correct, but then the eyelids are actually going too high. And sometimes is the surface itself, but we can explore that. Over the weekend, I can actually do some reading about it, you know, and see if there's an average we can use as a, you know, a kind of like trust, something like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious about it too. I remember like getting some comments, you know, it's like someone who was actually a really great modeler. He commented one time when I was sculpting the Michelangelo, he said like, yeah, the thickness of the eyelids are the only thing. It's like, you know, it's like it doesn't read correctly to me. And I agreed, you know, it's like there was something off, and it was a little bit too thick, I believe. But yeah, I got a lot of stuff done today. That's good. I don't want to go through this process again. I just want to have fun next week and just go on with the sculpting, you know. That's the fun part of it. Let's mesh my ear just slightly better. Ears are very interesting, right? Like we take for granted, and sometimes I see some really good artists that they're just like lazy when it comes to ears. They just like do these beautiful faces, and then the ears look like nothing. But they're very specific too. Like the architecture of it is very beautiful, actually. I'm actually learning a lot with you guys in this group. You know, that's been very cool. Thanks for sharing the little tips and tricks. I'm gonna try my best to do the same on my side, and hopefully I can teach you something, because so far I'm learning more.
That's not true.
Come on, man.
No, it's good. I mean, like when you're a group of artists, especially experienced artists, you know, it's like it's good because there is a nice interchange of ideas, you know. And I even posted this today. It's completely honest too, you know. It's a little intimidating because you know you're in front of people who actually do this for a living. A lot of people, and then sometimes you're just doing it. It was like, you know, am I being judged because I'm doing that in a kind of like a weird way, you know? But at the end of the day, when you go to conferences and talks, you know, it's like the most important thing is that you get from them is that, for example, like 90% is going to be something that you're like, I knew that. But then sometimes there's a tiny little thing that the person says, and it was like, oh, this was worth the admission already, you know. It's like because I really didn't know that. That's a great one. So yeah, hopefully you're gonna have a couple of those insights for you guys that you can actually use to do your stuff. And again, like I mean, like my pipeline is completely different from the pipeline I use at ILM, right? In there, you have to follow a lot of rules to make sure that the next person gets everything in a certain way. But here I have absolute freedom to do everything, which is the best part to me, you know, because like I said yesterday or the day before, in a pipeline, you can actually, if you want to see the result of something, you pass your model to someone else, and then the TD is going to do some work. Is going to work on the shaders and everything, and then the rigger and blah blah blah. And then at the end of the day, you do the work today, and you're going to see some results sometimes within 3 days or like a week from now. And when you're in absolute control of everything, like we are here, in one night I can do like multiple iterations. You know, I can have this model completely resculpted. And then all this stuff like reprojected, the hair adapted to it, you know, it's like multiple passes, everything in one night. You can have like 4 iterations in one night, for example, instead of like waiting for people in the line. So that's what fascinates me, you know, it's like you can get much faster results, especially like if you're supervising a show, right? You're gonna give some notes and you're gonna wait for the model to come back, and then give some more notes, and then wait for the model to come back. And then here, basically, like the iterations are much more, right? Like you get like sometimes like 10 iterations to get what you want. And then, but when you're in control of everything, you take mental notes of everything. And then if I see a render, the next time you're gonna see another render from me, a lot of stuff gonna be addressed. Not gonna be just like one single spot. It's gonna be a lot of stuff. And then the next one, a lot of stuff again, because I'm correcting the texture and the lighting and everything in one single pass. So I love this process, man. And it's really fulfilling.
One thing would be so amazing if you like to talk about, because as you may remember, I told you I'm coming from game industry. And honestly, I'm gonna switch to cinematic and VFX industry because I'm bored with overlaying everything. Wanted to know how is which is the better approach to get to that industry, in the industry you are working.
So like
what kind of model is fine to have in our portfolio, and what to do, what not to do?
Yeah, you know, the main thing is it's I guess is like how can I say that? For example, like when I came to this industry, it was a different time, right? It's I started in this industry in 2004. So I came from Brazil, basically like being a banker in Brazil. You know, had to learn English that I'm still practicing, as you can tell. But and then everything was very different, and I was discovered, right? I entered a couple of challenges at CG Talk, and I won 2 of those big challenges in there. And then the job offers start like showing up, you know. So I think this aspect didn't change much, you know. I think people are constantly looking for talent out there, and the main thing is to actually expose yourself, right? Not expose your private parts, but expose your work. So the best platforms you have right now are basically like I love Instagram. I know some people really hate it, but I love Instagram. It's not very user friendly because of the whole thing you have to send to yourself by email and then always upload from your phone, because you know, the desktop app, they have one that's kind of like it's a little bit scammy. I think that thing has some weird stuff going on in it. So I always use the phone So it's not like very user friendly if you're posting artwork like that. But if you get over that hump and just like, okay, I'm gonna send myself an email with a bunch of images and just like download to my phone. I do this all the time. Then it's great, you know. It's like it's the best art community I know at this point. All my favorite artists are on Instagram and they post constantly there. I follow them. And then obviously there's Artstation, right? Like you get a lot of views. You get like millions of views at Artstation, depending on your work. And all of them, the secret is always the same. It's like the amount of times you post, right? It's how constant are your posts. That's how many followers you're gonna get is proportional to that. Unless you want to buy fake followers, like some people I know, just buying fake followers. Like, what's wrong with you, man? Being an insta sensation. I joke about that. It's buying fake followers. That's crazy to me. But yeah, so I think the most important thing is to actually post your work. You know, it's like in those platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and then Artstation. If you do that, people are gonna see your work, and eventually you're gonna be contacted. You know, your work is pretty amazing. Like your pieces are really strong. You know, so I don't think you're gonna have a problem if you want to apply to one of those places. In the past, there would have to be. I mean, like the talent, I think, was a little bit. The demand was a little higher in the past. I think they are a little bit more flexible nowadays. You know, I see people getting hired who are not like exactly amazing at what they do, but they're good enough for the task. You know, and I think you are someone who have a lot of talent. You know, so I guess it's just a matter of like putting your face out there. You know, posting more, and then eventually sending your reel when they're recruiting. You know, keep an eye out for LinkedIn as well. I don't use it because I'm not looking for a job for the past, like 12 years. But I know that a lot of people use LinkedIn, you know, it's like, and the recruiters are all over the place with them in there. So I think that would be the main thing. And if you get like front pages, of course, like Artstation, I'm pretty sure you can get those. And ZBrush Central, although ZBrush Central kind of is a little bit changed now because they changed the entire forum thing, the platform. And the visibility doesn't seem the same, you know. I post stuff in there, and now instead of like getting thousands of views, you get like, you know, a couple of 100 views or something. So I think that's a little bit trying to rebuild itself right now. So, but it would be nice to just support Pixologic because they're so nice to artists, you know. But yeah, I think that's it. Basically, you know. When you get to an interview, for example, it's very important your attitude, of course, how much you're willing to do stuff. Just as an example, when I went to my first interview at Island, I didn't have a portfolio, right? Like official, not a portfolio. A portfolio I had. I didn't have a demo reel. I never had one actually. And but I had my laptop filled with images I did like for my personal work. And every time I got any job offer or anything in this industry was due to my personal work. Nobody ever said like, oh, we are hiring you because you work in that movie, you know. And that's important because that means that they're looking at your personal style, how you solve problems and things like that, you know. I think what's going to make the difference for you in this industry is your ability to solve problems. But this is going to be shown just over the years, you know. So, for example, like there's you know, this thing is a little funny to me because people do this forever. Like they work in all those projects, but every time there's a new project starting, it's almost like they have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes maybe to prove a point, you know, or whatever, you know. It's like maybe it's a power kind of thing, you know. It's like they want to make sure that they are necessary for the project. But there's always like this thing about reinventing the wheel. So every time there's a new project coming up, although we did the same thing or very similar stuff like 1,000 times before, there is always like this freak out that happens. Like, how are we going to do this, right? And as if they didn't know that. But at the end, you know, it's like it always comes like to problem solving. So someone is going to just raise their hand. It's like, well, we can approach this way. And then all of a sudden it's all solved, you know. And I over the years, you're going to develop this a lot. In terms of course, if you put the effort to it, right? And then a software like ZBrush, for example, it has like a number of ways of doing the same thing, right? Just those little things you guys told me today, for example, I didn't know. So, and I still did the job before, right? It's just gonna make my life a little bit easier now with those things. But it's gonna come down like to your talent, how good you are at what you do. and also your ability to work in teams, of course, and to show an attitude. Like in my first interview, they asked me like, okay, so you are organic modeler, but what if we had at some point we don't have something organic for you to model? How would you approach that? You know, it's like, how would you feel about that if you have just props? We had like someone has to build a box, and then all of a sudden it's not something exciting. So how you feel about that? And my answer was kind of like, of course I was smart because I thought about it before I said it. But my answer was like, okay, I worked in the bank for like 15 years of my life. So if you give me a box, I'm going to be happy to do it for you. So, you know, it's like demonstrating that you're willing to do stuff. It's important, you know, and especially working in teams, right? Like I remember like going to this conference called TAGU that a lot of you guys know. And then it was reviewing some portfolios in there. And this guy, he was a 2D artist. And he came to me and he had this beautiful work, like really talented guy. And then he said like, so I'm planning to enter this industry, but I'm really afraid because what if they don't like something I did? And then they're going to ask me to redo it. It was like, what do you mean? It was like, yeah, because I think like, for example, if I do something, I really like it, then I don't want anyone to change it, right? I was like, man, maybe this industry is not for you then. My advice to him was like, you know that this work is not yours, right? I mean, like you're selling your service, basically, like you're selling your service right now. So you're doing the work for someone else. You're trying to realize the vision of a director, and directors can be very funny sometimes. You know, it's like their views. They don't match your views at all. So they have a different concept about what looks good and what looks bad than we have. And we just have to roll with it, you know? And at the end of the day, it's paying your salary. You're getting your salary anyway. And if you have to redo 10 times the same work, and you're still gonna do this within the parameters of your time, for example, like you're gonna work like 8 hours in the studio, maybe 9 hours a day, if you are in a good studio. Otherwise they're going to screw you up and make you work for 12 hours. But if you're in a good studio, you're going to work like your 8 hours and maybe some overtime from time to time, but not all the time. But you know, you're going to be able to do this without shooting yourself in the foot, you know. So that's my short answer. Jesus Christ.
Man, I think you described very well, because I had the experience very similar with the game industry.
Yep.
It's sometimes even more in nowadays, because all the process is gonna be more procedural to be more fast and to make more money. In the end of the day, the end of the day, the nature of the business is making more money for the stakeholders, right?
That's the thing. The shareholders, they have to make their bucks, right?
Exactly. And that's why I really love the approach of these classes, because this classes is the things that I'm looking for to make art with the 3D technology.
Exactly, man.
This is rare. This is very rare. That's why I think I don't want that this class is finished anymore, because it's so nice. It's the best part of the life. Yeah, because I need to go back to the industry and start to work for someone else and make the 10 times the same job, and suffering like the rat, the mouse on the wheel, like we said before.
But, you're totally right, man. I mean, like in terms of fulfillment, right? Like you get to those like ups and downs in the projects, right? So sometimes you get something really exciting, and then you work in this like the main character for a movie or something, and then you're super happy with it. And then next up, you don't have anything to do, and then it's completely dry. And then, or the work is going to be sent to some other center, you know, some other pod, and then all of a sudden you're like, either you get stuck into this frustration kind of thing, right? Like you're just like, okay, so what am I going to do now? I'm just building environment stuff or boxes or whatever, and then I'm not feeling fulfilled. But the thing is, like the balance is always within yourself, right? Is the whole thing about the relationships in general with the human beings. Sometimes, like you are in a relationship with someone, you know, it's like you're married to someone, And then sometimes you're expecting the balance to be that person, right? Like that person has to bring the balance to my life. And that's completely wrong, right? Like you have to bring the balance to yourself. And I think with those things, the personal work I do is essential to me to keep my sanity, you know, because I get very frustrated with directions you don't agree with, of course. And there's always like this little thing about like proving people wrong, you know. Sometimes like you say something like trying to help, and then you're just shut down because there's a like a legacy way of doing things, and then people just don't accept it. And then you go and you're doing your personal work and you do exactly that, and then people come to you and ask like, how did you do that? Like, well, I was trying to tell you. So that happens. So yeah.
Yeah, man. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, my pleasure, guys. I like the experience a lot, actually.
Oh, can I ask something about the eyes as well? Because the corner of the eye, the tear duct.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very important to nail the shape of the eyes, right?
Yes, very important.
And do you have the extra geometry for that eye?
Yes, I do. Next week, when we start putting stuff together, we're gonna, like in the next couple of weeks, we're gonna be putting all the pieces together. But what I normally do with the caruncula here, I actually make it deeper than I would expect. So for example, I would bring it all the way down here, and I keep like I make a pocket in there, right? And that pocket later on, I'm gonna be filling with an additional piece of geometry. And that piece of geometry, I'm gonna use some trickery to get it like to really blend together with the rest. So at the end, you're gonna have something that actually reads, let's see a front view here, that reads like a single piece, but it's actually in separate pieces. So we see like I have it in here and it blends perfectly with the eye. And the way I do this, instead of like using just like the transmission channel to actually do that, I actually use the transmission plus the geometry transparency. Because there are two different things. You have like the transmission that just like eliminates the color and everything, it makes transparent, but it keeps the specular. And then you have the geometry transparency as well, that actually makes everything transparent, including the specular and everything. So I use that node to actually create like a perfect blend. And then when I sculpt the caruncula, I add some veins in it and the color as well. And I also paint the veins in the cornea. The sclera, like paint the veins, the sclera. So when I have the transparency in there, it creates like a multi-layer version of veins, you know. So you get a very nice little blend in there. But we're gonna go through this like in the next weeks. I'm gonna be showing like again, my intention is to actually open every single little model and shader network and explore them with you and tell you why I'm using certain things and why I'm, for example, the UVs in here for the caruncula, I basically like spin it and I keep it vertical. So I can use just like a simple ramp map at the end, and I can control that ramp map just to make sure that I get a nice blend. And unlike what we do, for example, in the studio, which is just like the caruncula ends right here, my caruncula actually goes all the way close to the iris. So I can actually blend as much as I want, you know. And then obviously if you have like a rigger and you're gonna animate this thing later, you're gonna have to include that in the system and make sure that it has some kind of like stiffness to the sclera to make sure that it behaves correctly. And the stiffness would have to happen in this area, but actually be very kind of stiff around here. So it's stiffer as you get closer to the caruncula. But I mean, that would be a problem for the rigger to solve, not something for us to solve here.
Yes, because if you have this artifact inside of the eyes, this in animation can be a very problem, even more for the render with some transparency.
Yeah, exactly. But no, in our case here, we are lucky we are just doing stills. But yeah, like animation would be a whole can of worms. Somebody asked me the other day, you know, it's like, oh, are you going to animate this character? I was like, man, it's a whole new ball game in here if I do that. Yeah.
No, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Let's see how we're doing. Yeah, we are kind of like reached the end of this lesson today, and then I'm sorry it was the boring part, right? Like just doing the projection and stuff. But at least now this is done, and then next week is just the fun stuff from now on. It's gonna be like we're gonna be holding hands and singing together from now on. So thank you so much, guys, again. And I'm glad some of you guys managed to make it today. And I hope to see you guys, soon. And please keep working on your stuff over the weekend if you can, right? Because like I said before, like the amount of progress you're going to see is going to be proportional of the amount of work you're going to put in your own stuff. And in the spirit of not going over, it's like, you guys, I'm going to just like pause them all the way it is now. Probably going to just finish the projection to make it more decent, and then not touch this model until next week when we finally get into the HD stuff.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Chris. Have a great weekend, guys.
You too, guys. Thank you so much. Keep posting stuff in the group. I'm gonna be checking soon.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Right. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.